Welcome, Bay Community. I am Dr. Amanda Court, and a happy new year. It is 2024, and we are now in a new year. And we are going to talk about and continue to have Wellness Wednesdays and talk about parenting and mental health. So, for all of you, I want to let you know that we did post a survey on our Facebook page, and it just asks people what topics they want to talk about because we're here for you. We want to make sure that we are all dealing with topics that are most important to you. And so I did throw that out there. I will be happy to tackle topics that you recommend. And if I'm not an expert, which I am not an expert on everything, that is for certain, I will go out and try and find an expert on these things. So please, please, please do the survey, and we will try to accommodate talking about those topics. So without further ado, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. We are parents in 2024, and we're continuing to try and be the best parents we can be. And with that, I am going to start the session and talk about our next topic. So with that, we're back with parenting and mental health. And we're going to review what we talked about at the end of last year, which was setting goals, but we're going to take it a little bit of a step further. So first, we talked about joy. And if you missed our last session from the end of last year, we talked about finding your purpose. So what I find with a lot of my clients is that a lot of their emotional challenges come from not having a purpose. So we do spend a lot of time in the joy exercise. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it tonight. I just want to review this because the holidays are tough and not everyone makes it. So I make sure everyone gets a chance to review. And sometimes I know I'm one of those people. I'm horrible at watching instructional videos, and I'm much better when it's online. So if you are one of those people, I'm with you. And I just want to review that what the joy exercise is give yourself 5 to 10 minutes. And really the time isn't important, but what you have to do is figure out 20 things, items that bring you joy. It can be people, places, events, everything in between. Everything from watching a leaf fall from a tree to going to a wedding. I mean, it's everything in between, right? It can be big and small events, but just something that, without you doing anything, just makes you smile. Those are the things that you want to put down in that joy list. And from that, when you make that joy list, the next thing we do is we bucket those items, those 20 items. And what I told people from the last session was that if you were struggling getting to 20, welcome to the rest of us. Most people struggle to get to 20. That's why that number is there. And our purpose is to make sure you get to 20, because those last like 3 to 4 to 5 items really tell us a lot about ourselves. And we end up thinking about things that we maybe didn't think of before. And so we find those whole 20, and then we take them and we break them down into 3, 4, maybe 5 buckets. Okay. And what we do is we put them into buckets. And what I did here is I gave you kind of suggested buckets they might fall into. So maybe they were achievement and success related. Maybe they were relationship and community related. Whatever they are, and I gave a lot of other words underneath of those categories that might be more specific to what yours are related to. That's important. So figure out the 3 to 5 buckets that your 20 items fall into, and they all have to go into an item. No miscellaneous allowed. If you can't find a bucket, think deeper about that thing. So maybe there's a particular thing that doesn't fit into a bucket. You might have to take a second and really think about why that thing brings you joy. And you'll eventually be able to find 3 to 5 buckets that work. I spend a lot of time with people on this. Sometimes we have to really think and explore why those things bring you joy, but we get there. And the purpose of that is because what those 3 to 5 buckets represent are your values. And so the reason values are important is that when we transition from being a child to being an adult, is we transition from having our parents' values to having our own values. Sometimes they're all the same or very similar, and sometimes they're not. And most of the time, they're somewhere in the middle. And once we figure out as an adult what our values are, we're able to make better decisions. So I know this is about parenting and mental health, right? So what's important for us as parents is that we maybe sit there with our kids and we talk about our own values. And at this point, depending on the age of your children, right? If they're younger, then talking about why the values that you have are important will really have a lot of influence over your children. Once they're a little bit older, once they're teenagers and beyond, just still talking about why your values are important, but giving them the space to say, yes, that fits with who I am, or no, it doesn't. And sometimes it won't, and that's okay. Okay. In the end, what's really important is that the person establishes those values, because what it does is it gives us direction, it gives us that North Star that we lacked before. And once we have that, we're able to set up a structure and create boundaries around things that don't align with our values. We're able to set up a structure and goals and objectives and all of those things that allow us to decide how to go forth in this world. And when things are going poorly, we can look at those things that are going poorly and say, yeah, these things are going poorly, but I know I'm supposed to do this, or I know what I really am passionate about is this. If you think about any really famous person, they've all had adversity and they've all overcome it because they had really clear values and a really clear goal. So that's what we're getting to, because this is the beginning of a new year. So what we're going to spend a lot of time on tonight is setting goals. And not just setting goals, but setting goals or resolutions, as many of us call it, but setting them with the intention of actually achieving them. So a lot of people I hear is like, I don't set goals. They're silly. They don't amount to anything. They just make me feel bad about myself. Well, that's because you've set a goal, because setting a goal isn't that hard, right? Like I can set a goal right now to say, I'm going to go to bed by 8 o'clock. Great. I just set a goal. That wasn't hard. Now, whether I actually get to bed by 8 o'clock is a whole nother story. I have 2 kids and a husband. Okay. So whether I actually get to bed on time has a lot more variables that don't depend on me that I have to deal with. So setting goals is the easy part. Achieving them is the hard part. And any entrepreneur will tell you that the achieving the goal is the hard part. And they all develop systems around that. So that doesn't mean don't set the goals. Absolutely set the goals. So the joy exercise and those buckets is telling you what you're passionate about, what your values are. And then what we do is we're going to take those goals, and I'm going to come back to them in a little while. You want to take those values and you want to create categories of your life. Now, most people, and this is called the wellness, the wheel of wellness, or the wellness wheel, and it's been adjusted over time. This is probably the most accepted version of it. And with these 6 categories, there's probably a value that you align with in most of these categories. There might be some categories in this wellness wheel that you don't have a strong value, whether maybe it's occupational or maybe it's physical. Whatever it is, these are the 6 spokes of a wheel that support your wellness overall. And as a therapist, I'm a big supporter of this. I talk to all my clients about their diet, their sleep, their work life, their personal life, their social life and their family life. And we talk about all these different things. We talk about what they believe in, and we talk about how they're trying to grow themselves. And I do all of that because all of that contributes to your health. Oftentimes we go to people that are specialists and they only deal with one thing. Unfortunately, that specialist can treat one thing, but unfortunately, a lot of spokes contribute to your overall wellness. So take someone that's battling a cancer diagnosis. That cancer diagnosis doesn't just affect them. It affects their family, their friends, right? And that's going to affect their relationships with those people. It's going to affect their professional life. And a lot of people I've talked to in the past have been very concerned about their professional life after a cancer diagnosis. It affects their intellectual life, their spiritual life, everything. So acknowledging all of those is really, really important. And what you can do is once you figure out what your values are, you can figure out how your values align with each of these spokes of the wheel. So we talked about a little this before the holidays, before, towards the end of the year last time. And so we looked at how do your values align with each of these spokes? And then looking at these values, comparing them with each of these categories and figuring out which ones align. And then we create our own little wellness wheel. And we fill out the outer circle with the things that have the biggest impact on us. Okay. And so I just use this particular one as an example. Maybe one is health, one's relationships or social. Another one is spiritual. It could be religious, spiritual, all that, purpose, personal growth, financial. Those could be the spokes that have the greatest importance to you. Okay. And then what we do is we then move inward and we look at the inner bullets for those particular spokes. And we say, how do those spokes really impact us? And for example, it might mean that for an occupational spoke, an occupational pie of the wheel, it might say something like, I have a meaningful career where I'm appreciated. So that means for you that you really value having a professional relationship that is more than just bringing you a paycheck. Not everyone has that, and that's okay. Some people do, and some people really want this greater meaning for their profession, and that's part of what they value. So I'm repeating all of this just so that people can review and understand that having this helps you. It's really important for mental health. As a parent, it's extremely important. As an individual, it's extremely important for you to understand what your values are, because when you understand your values, then you can assess or go back and look at your behaviors and see if they align with your values. And what I've found with every single person that's come into my office and has had some sort of mental health challenge was that their behaviors or what has happened to them hasn't aligned with their values. And that's why they're there. Okay. And some of the things they can control and some of the things they can't. Either way, they have to figure out how to resolve them. So often people don't even know what their values are. So they have to go back and figure that out. So they then can understand why they're feeling this dissonance, this anxiety, this depression, this just angst related to their emotional self. And you might have that with your kids. And with kids, it's really important because you as a parent, if you have that, it's almost certain that your kids are going to have it because they take the lead from you and they will follow you. And as you become more certain in your values and as you set clearer boundaries and have a very clear direction as to who you are, your kids will take that as the lead. That doesn't mean they're going to end up there, but it gives them kind of a guidepost to decide whether to go the direction you went or to go a different direction. But without that guidepost, they just kind of wander and they don't really feel like they have a clear direction. And that can really take away from their confidence because they don't know whether they're going the right way or the wrong way because there's no guidance, right? So that's a reason why having really clear values and then setting boundaries and, analyzing your behaviors off of those values is really important. So we talked about that. And then we talked about setting kind of goals within each of those value buckets, right? I want to be in peak physical shape, or, I want to maintain positive relationships. I want to be financially comfortable. All these things are aligned, like objectives, right? That are aligned to your greater purpose. Okay, so we're going to take this down a notch to something, this is pretty big and overarching. This is like life things, right? We're going to think about 2024. We're now in it. We're in the third day of 2024. Many people set resolutions, and I get why people don't like doing them. And I also really appreciate the value of setting a resolution. Very often, and you'll see this in any like a life-changing thing, whether it's losing weight or trying to achieve a goal, like maybe somebody wants to run a marathon or they want to write a book or they want to get a certain job, right? They want to, or they want to graduate a school. Oftentimes and there's a lot of science behind this, it says, if you state what you want to do out loud and you talk to other people about it, whether it's putting it on social media or telling your friends like, hey, I want to achieve this thing, right? And this starts at, even when you're little, like little kids saying like, I want to be a police officer when I grow up, or I want to be a doctor when I grow up. That impacts the way their behavior goes in the future because they've now told someone they want to do this. And that impacts where they go. It impacts the people they interact with to some extent, less so when they're little, more so as an adult, right? So if you want to be an ultra successful entrepreneur, then you're going to seek ultra successful entrepreneurs to be around if you want to be the best, right? If you want to be the best police officer you can be, or law enforcement officer, you're going to talk to other law enforcement officers or teacher or whatever profession happens to be, right? You're going to talk to people or try and find people that have done it so that you have some sort of guidepost. And so this is important for you as parents to help your kids find this. So the joy exercise is really essential for that. And then to pull a thread from there. So once you have some sort of general guidance, and so for you in general, you've gotten your buckets, right? 3 to 5 buckets. You've given each of those buckets kind of like an objective. And from there, we're going to start setting goals. So with those goals, what I want you to do is really put your big transformational moonshot goal out there. So for excuse me, tired tonight. So for a teenager that likes science and maybe is inspired by physicians, they say, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. That can feel like a moonshot to them because they're 16, they're still in high school. There's so many milestones they have to hit still. That can feel like a moonshot. You as a parent can then say, okay, like this is what you want to do. Great. So put that as their moonshot and then work down. So a year from now at 16, that means that the next year or two of high school, you need to get these types of grades and you need to get these grades in these types of classes because though that will line you up to getting into this school, which will then align you up to getting into X medical school or help line you up for the proper, and you can do all this research, right? Like this is all working backwards. Because what you do is you set the moonshot And then what that does is it gives you a North Star. It gives you something, or that, what I often tell people, that mountain peak that you want to get to the top of. Once you have that, then you can find your trail map to get you there. Once you have your North Star, you can follow that direction. But without that, you feel lost, lonely, out of control, anxious, worried, down, because you have no direction. Does that sound familiar? If that sounds familiar, then doing these really simple exercises can help you. So then once you have something that feels like, and it might feel ridiculous. I have so many stories of people that, and if you look up any Olympic athlete or any, well-known entrepreneur, they're going to say most likely, I had this dream of doing this thing. Jeff Bezos is a great example, right? He and his wife decided they want to sell books online. When they started that, it seemed a little nuts. Like, really, you want to sell books online? Like, nobody does that. That seems nuts. That's not going to do well. Well, now they're the biggest retail business in the world. And they don't just sell books, they sell everything. And that started from someone just really setting a moonshot of like, I want to do this online. And like, I think I can do it, despite people not believing them. And what they did is they took that moonshot and they said, okay, well, what's it going to take to do that? And they worked backwards in a really practical way. This is where being a parent comes in. So if your kid says, I want to be an auto mechanic, great. Then do some research, look what it takes to be an auto mechanic in your state, right? Or your county, even what classes you need to take in high school or vocational school or wherever, and work backwards. And you work backwards until you get to something so specific, until you get to the clear goal, which I'm going to talk about. So how do you come up with that moonshot? Let's go to that first. Setting the moonshot goal. What's the first thing you need to think about? And for us as parents, these are what these questions are geared towards, and I'll correct them in a second for kids. What are the biggest problems facing humanity today? That might seem ridiculous, right? Like, I'm not going to save the world. Why would I think about that? Well, maybe. So I'll use myself as an example, right? One of the biggest problems facing humanity today is mental health. Mental health all over the world is struggling. We've seen, not just in the US, but in other countries around the world, where suicide rates have gone up, the rates of anxiety and depression have gone up, and it has become a true problem. So how do we tackle that? Well, for me, that's probably where I'm going to put my stake in the ground, right? I'm going to tackle that. And then I already know I'm passionate about that, right? I want to help people. So that aligns with that. So for you, what are some of the big problems? I mean, there's tons. And if you actually Google what are the biggest problems facing humanity today, Google will give you a list. One of those is more than likely to hit you in some strange way, or in some way. Whether it's, you know, issues with the environment or the economy or politics or mental health or physical health, right? Or any number of any other things. There's so many things that are facing. We have countries around the world that are still short on food, right? We have countries around the world that struggle with education. We have places that still have gender or race inequity. So there's tons of things facing the world today that are a real problem. And so find one that aligns with your values. And then think about what you're passionate about. And you do the same thing with your kids, right? So first you have to figure out where you are. And then when you go to your kids, you can kind of present some of these being age appropriate, right? So for kids, oftentimes things involving the environment are a little bit more easy to approach because they're less complex, right? They can plant a tree and feel good about it. They can understand that the tree puts oxygen out into the environment. We breathe oxygen. It's simple. When you get into things like politics or some of the more complex things around uh the medical industry or whatever, it can become a little bit more taxing, but as a parent, you can, work through that. Then once you figure out things that you're passionate about, maybe you're passionate about sports. That's fine. Well, we have a big problem with people being healthy, and sports promote health. So sports promote confidence, so it can deal with that mental health component. Sports can also promote equity in a lot of ways, right? Because someone that's fast and strong, it's irrelevant of weight or gender a lot of times. So what you're passionate about and look at what humanity's facing, you kind of tackle that. And then go into things that you really want to change. Okay, what's something you'd like to change in your house? Then maybe your school, then maybe your community. And then how can those problems be applied to your family? So once you get there, that's when you can really start to work with your kids and figure out, how can my kids get involved? How can I do this? And so if you're a parent with really small children, don't worry, this still applies. Just getting them, I have elementary age children. And we sit down, and we've sat down for the last 3 years, and we've done resolutions. And what we spend a lot of time doing, which I'll show you at the end, is thinking back on the past year. We think about what we've learned, what we enjoyed, which goes back to the joy exercise, right? And then we think about for the next year what we want to learn and what we want to get better at and what we want to achieve, which is all part of the same kind of thing, right? And how we want to feel. So that's a big one. So sometimes we don't think about that. We could say good. I challenge you to go deeper than that. Instead of just saying, I want to feel good, do you want to feel successful? Do you want to feel comfortable? Do you want to feel content? Do you want to feel just exuberant, right? What are the really true feelings that you want to feel in the next year? And for your kids, let them go through that. And if they're not sure if they felt those feelings before, depending on their age, try and bring examples up, right? Maybe they've performed in chorus before or drama, or maybe they were the one that they were only one in the class or one of the few that got the question right in class. That can be a really prideful, exuberant, joyful moment for them. And so try and find those for them and see where they really truly are feeling excited. For a lot of kids that are younger, they're gonna feel joy being around their friends. Especially in Western culture. Not all of them will. I have one kid that definitely is an introvert, and that particular child wants to do things on their own, and they get joy from achieving things on their own. And that's okay too. So you just have to tease through it for your children. So these questions are really good ones. I hope I've given you enough time to figure that out and write them down, possibly. These are the questions that you want to ask your kids and yourself to help you come up with those moonshot goals. Once you've done that, you want to work backwards, right? So then you're going to take these moonshot goals and you're going to work from, okay, what's this big giant thing that in my lifetime I want to do? Now, for a kid, lifetime might be a little too tough to figure out. It might be more of like, when you grow up, what do you want to be or what do you want to have achieved? That might be big enough, right? And honestly, sometimes kids are better at moonshot goals than we are as adults because we don't have all those constraints. So, kids saying they want to be an astronaut or they want to be a professional football player and or whatever, they're better at that than we are. Let them do it and then work them back from that. Like, okay, well, a year from now, like you're going to be this old, like what do you think someone that's doing this would be? And so sometimes when they're smaller, you might go 5 years and then a year, but just work backwards. The point of it is to work so far backwards that you get to what we call a clear goal. And that clear goal has to be so specific that it seems stupid not to do. And I really mean that. So for instance, if your moonshot goal is, I want to be an author. Maybe I want to be a Times best-selling author. Okay, that's a moonshot goal for sure. Okay, well, first let's think about what it takes to be an author. You have to write a book. Okay, well, how are you going to write a book? So in a year, maybe you write a book. In a month, your month goals, right? What do you have to do in 1 month? Maybe you have to write, I don't know, 3,000 words, or maybe you have to write 10,000 words in a month. So that means that in a week, you have to set aside time, at least several times a week, to write. And then daily goals, maybe daily goals are you write 1 or 2 sentences. What is your clear goal? Every day and your clear goal might be daily, it might be weekly. The clear goal is going to be something so easy that it's impossible to say no to. So maybe the daily goal is every day I write down something related to X. And it might be a sentence. It's kind of hard to say no to writing a sentence down as an adult. As a kindergartner, that might be a monumental task. As an adult, I would really press you if you're having a hard time writing one sentence down related to something, right? So do that. So make your goals down to so specific that it's impossible to say no to. And you can do this for anything. And if you struggle with it, bring in a friend, bring in a spouse, bring in your kids. Kids are brilliant at this. They can really get down and be like, well, if you want to write a book, you have to write words down every day. Brilliant. That's so simple, it's hard to say no to, right? Once you get to there, all the barriers that you put up in front of you because you're afraid of that moonshot goal, because you're afraid of what that means or what it doesn't mean, or you're hearing all the past voices from your own childhood that said you couldn't do it, kind of go away, right? Maybe it says you want to be a Olympic athlete. Well, what does it mean to do that? Well, a year from now, that means maybe you're doing X, Y, and Z, like you're able to achieve these certain goals. A month from now, that means you had to be hitting these milestones. Weekly goals means you have to work out every day, right? Daily goals means you have to complete your workout. Does it mean you have to complete your workout within a certain amount of time and a certain amount of this? No, that's daily. It just means you get it done. Okay. So sometimes you get to the clear goal and the daily goal, just doing it is the vote in the direction of achieving your goal. And that's when it gets so simple, stupid, that you can't say no, right? Eating healthy might be one. Well, maybe you get to a clear goal of like, every day, I'm just going to eat one green thing. That's kind of hard to say no to, right? Even if it's 1 leaf of spinach, really? Can you not do that? Be hard to say no to, right? So that's how you break it down to be simple. And you know yourself and your children best. Now, when you create these goals, I have heard before that goals are easy to make. And what's hard to create and what separates the people that create goals from the people that achieve goals is the system. So what you want to do is create these goals within a system. And that's the next part that I want to teach you. So this comes a lot from an author called James Clear. He's written Atomic Habits. And I'll mention him at the end and show you the book that kind of inspires this. Okay. But it also comes from other avenues and some of my own stuff. I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge where I get some of this knowledge from. So when you're setting a goal within a system, we just talked about setting a goal so small and so simple, it's hard to say no to. Then the next step of that is tracking your habits, right? So maybe we go to an exercise goal because a lot of people have those, right? So like maybe the big moonshot goal is I want to lose 50 pounds, right? I want to get to a weight that I haven't been in a decade. because that'll make me healthier. And then it aligns with your values, because maybe you have a value of being there for your family. And if you're healthier, you're going to be there, more present for your family longer, right? So you're seeing how this is now attached to your values and it's attached to your health, and it keeps going backwards, right? So first, set a goal that's so tiny that you can't say no to. Maybe it's, I go outside and I walk around for 5 minutes. That'd be kind of hard to say no to. Even if you have a very intense, I know some pretty intense executive leaders, CEOs of companies, they have a chance to walk around for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, right? So set a small goal, start there. Then track it. And just it can be on your, your device, which I highly recommend, like smartwatches, Apple Watches, Fitbits, all of the above. If you have a Fitbit, you can look at your whole month's tracking. And many of the other trackers can do this as well. Track your habits. There is definitely a quote that says, if you cannot measure it, it cannot be improved, right? So the flip of that is, if you can measure it, you can improve it. And this is done in so many aspects, right? So if we want to know where we start from, and I do this in the mental health profession, people do it in the medical profession, we get a baseline. We say, where are we to start, right? And then we know from there if we've improved, because it's really hard to see small incremental improvements. It gets easier to see them if we track them. Okay. So you might not see your progress maybe in the first week, but if you look at your progress from day 1 to day 68, on day 68, you might say, whoa, I've actually made a lot of progress. You wouldn't have noticed it otherwise. So track your habits. Okay. You can do this with kids. We use behavior charts. Teachers use this all the time. Put a behavior chart up or a chore chart up. And if you're trying to get your kids to do chores around the house, say, hey, these are the chores that you're assigned, give them a list. And every day that they do a chore they're assigned to, put a star on that day, right? And then they can see how many days they did the chores. They maybe feel really proud about achieving their goal. And that goal might be making money. Maybe you're paying them for those chores. Maybe the goal is just for them to do things around the house they're supposed to do. And that can feel really prideful for them, right? But tracking can really help all of us feel better about those small wins, and those small wins help maintain motivation. So track them. Then slowly increase. So this is a marathon runner trick. So I used to run marathons. I've completed over 10 marathons. That's not to brag, just to say I've done it a few times. And what the regiment for marathon runners is you start with a given week and you have different miles during the week. But at the end of each week, you increase the amount of miles you've run just by 2, 3, maybe 5 miles. And you do that every week for several weeks. And suddenly you're running more miles in the week than a marathon. And then maybe, you're finally getting to a point where you're really close to running the miles in a day that you would be in a marathon. And your body then is ready for it. You do it all at once, your body's like, whoa, this is way too much. It breaks down, it gets angry, you get injured, all that stuff. And that's true not only physically, but mentally. If we try to make a leap too far, our bodies aren't ready for it. I know you've all been there as parents when you've tried to make a leap too far. Maybe it was potty training, right? You're like, oh, I'm done with this. We're potty training our kids, or we're potty training our child. And it was just a leap too far, and it is a disaster, right? The child is a terror, right? They're screaming, they're yelling, they're not using the potty, and then you're set back 3, 4, 5 months because now you've created this traumatic experience because you just wanted to get done quickly. If you do things slowly, but you track it and you reward it, and then you slowly increase it, right? So maybe it's at 18 months, you have your child sit on the potty, and then they just sit on the potty for 5 minutes a day. And then they sit on the potty for 10 minutes. Then you ask them to pee on the potty. And you keep going up from there, right? This is all small children, but you can do this for teenagers. That for teenagers, think about driving and getting their driver's license, right? You're not going to have them go drive from here to California the first time they've gotten in a car. That'd be horrible, right? The first time you have them get in the car, you have them start it, maybe have them drive forward a few feet, you have them drive back. Stop there. Make them feel good about that. Go back the next day, a little bit more, a little bit more. Small increases. So small goals, then track the habits of them getting those goals achieved, celebrate them, then small increases. So it doesn't feel insurmountable. This is how we learn, people. Okay. When we're really successful at learning, we've taken something we already know and we've just built a little something on top, and that allows us to learn. The last part of really creating this, making this a habit, is finding a tribe that will support it. So I have a great example. I was trying to be really healthy this was many years ago now, and I was kind of new to really understanding what it meant to eat healthy, to be healthy. And I was lucky enough to fall into a community of um, basically yoga teachers, and they were all exceptionally healthy. They ate mostly fruits and vegetables, very lean meats, organic. They're just really good at what they ate. And I have to tell you, that accelerated my progress and my learning experience exponentially. So if you can find a group of people that are aligned with what you want, so if it's your children and you want them to get better at doing something, you put them with a group of people that all want the same goal, right? That's why, parents have their teenagers join club teams, because they want their child to be part of a group that's really all going towards the same goal. Or that's why kids join clubs in general, because they're seeking a goal of a similar interest. For you, if it's a weight loss goal, that's why you grab a group of people that all want the same thing. Or if you want to eat healthy or whatever it is, right? You grab a group of people that all want to do the same thing, and that will help making your goal more achievable easier, because it's a lot easier when you're with a group of people that you see all the time, that you feel accountable to, that all of a sudden you want to do the same thing they do. Okay. So that's what the system's all about. So let's take it a step further. And this is called the habit loop. So every habit that we develop has 4 components. So your tribe can really help you establish all 4 of these components. So those were like, this slide back here is more what we call macro, right? Like you establish these goals, you start to track it. And once you've found, like, even somewhere between your small increase or your tracking, like the small goal, and you're joining the tribe, we want to find this. And this is what it is. Every habit that's established starts with a cue. So what do we mean by a cue? Maybe it's oh, this is a great one. I heard this one a long time ago. There are more people in America, or I shouldn't say more. There is a large proportion of people in America that feel anxiety when they hear the 60 minutes clock sound. This is probably more true about 10 years ago, when we still had the main NBC, CBS, ABC stations. And you would hear around that, whatever it was, 7 o'clock time on Sunday night, you hear that tick, tick, tick. And it was a show, but that's always how they kind of did the trailer to their show, their marketing campaign. It actually gave most people in America anxiety. And here's why. It cued people to say, oh, geez, I'm about to start my work week again. And that seems stressful. So it created this whole cycle, starting with the cue. Okay, well, let's try this with something maybe possibly more rewarding. So the cue, we all have certain cues that are inherent to our day. Maybe it's waking up in the morning, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you trigger a bunch of habits. You probably trigger maybe stretching a little bit, brushing your teeth. So what are those, what are those cues? And what you can do is once you have a good sense of what those cues are, you can use that to identify the cravings that are associated with those cues. So cue first thing in the morning might be you're thirsty, you're hungry, right? Those are normal cue or cravings. Your response is, well, maybe I get something to drink, I get something to eat. Your reward is, I feel satiated, I don't feel thirsty anymore, right? So if you can attach things to this, if you can attach something to that cue, it might help you to create a new habit. So if the cue or the pattern is bad, then you might want to take stock, like maybe after lunch, you always feel tired and you want to take a nap. So in those cases, or maybe right after work, you get home and you often snack on things that you don't want to, or maybe you have a couple drinks that you don't want to, or maybe when your kids get home, they instantly get on video games. Well, what's the signal for that? Maybe it's because they're bored. So maybe, why are they bored? Maybe they're feeling lonely. So figure out what the cue is that's giving them those feelings. So maybe as they get home and they have no direction. So they need direction when they first come home. Maybe it's a list of things to do. For you, whatever it is. Maybe people, you go to work and you notice that people take a smoking break and you often go out and smoke with them. Is it really because you want to smoke, or is it because you're feeling lonely or you're feeling left out? So there are all sorts of things there that can kind of help you with that. The second cue is location. So if you've ever walked into a kitchen or seen a plate of cookies on a counter, and just eaten them because they were in front of you, or like you've gone to a restaurant where they've given you bread and butter and you've just eaten it mindlessly, then you understand the power of location, right? Or if you've ever just walked, gotten near a beach and suddenly you felt calm, or it's brought you good memories. Again, power of location, right? Or you've walked into a doctor's office and instantly felt nervous, even though you've never been in that doctor's office before. Same thing, power of location. So this is a really important book, and it drives a lot of mindless habits. In many cases, our habits and behaviors are simply a response to the environment that surrounds us. And there's a famous study on water versus soft drink consumption is one example of how our environment can either promote good habits or lead us to bad ones. So, however, location-based cues are not simply things that we respond to, but they can also be things we create. Multiple studies have discovered that new habits are actually easier to perform in new locations. And one theory is that we mentally assign habits to particular locations. This means that all of our current places that you're familiar with, your home, your office, the gym, whatever, already have behaviors, habits, and routines assigned to them. If you want to build new habits in these familiar locations, then you need to overcome the cues that are associated with that area, which means building a new habit in a new location might be easier to have a blank slate and create overcome those pre-existing triggers. So what does that mean? How's that work? It might mean every day when you get home from work, or for your kids, every day they get home, they take their shoes off, they wash their hands, and they get out their home. That is just a habit that you've created. And they do that every single day, right? Maybe it means on the weekends, on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings, they get up, there's something that they have planned to do because of where they are. Okay, so use the power of location to help you cue your kids and yourself to doing a particular habit. The next part of this is the preceding event. So many habits are the response of something that's already happened in your life. Like, we all know this. The phone rings or the doorbell rings. So immediately you check your phone or you go to answer the door, right? Or in some cases, you promptly run away from anywhere that you can be seen by the door because you don't want to answer. Whatever the case may be. Let's use the phone as an example. The phone buzzes, right? Or the phone dings. You instantly pick up your phone to check it. The notification bar lights up. It might be Facebook, it might be whatever, but you automatically check it. So if you can set your phone to giving you cues to go for a walk, drink water, suddenly you're using a cue that already causes you to respond to do something that's healthy. And you can do this with your kids too. I actually did this with one of my kids who was struggling with already potty trained, already in school, but suddenly having issues with fear of missing out is what I'll call it, and wasn't always getting to the bathroom when they need it. So I used the buzzing watch to trigger them to ask to go to the bathroom. So they were going to the bathroom and asking to go to the bathroom every hour or two. And I told the teacher about this ahead of time. So the teacher knew that they were being cued to do this. So they went to the bathroom, and then because they were doing it more frequently, they were cued. They wouldn't, you know, pee their pants or whatever when they weren't supposed to. Another good one of this is when I was growing up, anytime I was about to get in the car, I was immediately cued to go use the bathroom before I got in the car. Why? Because I had a couple of really unfortunate events when I was a child where my dad would not stop. And it just wasn't pleasant. I never wanted that to happen again. I'm not suggesting you do the unpleasant thing. Instead, you can use a cue and a location and a preceding event to help trigger your child to go do the thing you want them to do. Okay. It can be, I also use music in the morning. We actually have an Echo Dot that starts playing music first thing in the morning. We start it playing in the morning, and it slowly increases volume over a certain period of time. And that music cues my kids of, oh, okay, it's time to get up. They might also have an alarm, but sometimes they get used to that. The music often changes, so it keeps it just variable enough, but it's still music that it cues them to get up. So you can use that to help create a habit. Another cue is an emotional state. Okay. So an emotional state might be, many of us have a habit. The cue might be we feel sad and lonely, or we feel tired. Tired is a great one. When we feel tired, our body instinctually wants to find sugar. Okay, because we're tired. So we want to find energy. So we seek sugar. Kids do this too. And kids are amazing at this. If you ever want to know what sugar does to your body, give sugar to a small child. You will instantly see them run around the room. And once the sugar's up, they crash and they get cranky and irritable again. And then you give them sugar again, they ramp back up and they get hyper again. And the whole cycle repeats. So for you as a parent, you can use that as an example, and you can kind of notice, like, when I feel tired, I have a habit of wanting to seek sugar. Okay. You know, your kids are going to seek that too. So before that happens, you're cued for that. So the cue is you're tired, you crave sugar. The response is, for an adult, you might go find the sugar. For a kid, you might cry and whine because you're trying to find a way to get it because you don't have a way of yourself getting it. And the reward is, well, if you get the sugar, then you're rewarded and it'll all repeat. You don't get the reward. Maybe the reward is they're tired, you talk them into going to sleep, and then slowly over time, the cue, craving, and response, they start to recognize that, like, oh, okay, I'm tired, I need to go to bed. And they disassociate getting sugar from that tired event. So this is a tough one. It takes a little practice, but we all can do it. People. I can tell you right now, there are some people that I'm around that immediately want me to, like, comfort eat. There are other people that you might know as adults that you immediately want to maybe have a drink with. For kids, it can be the same way. There are some kids that they know that immediately want them to, they'll get really hyper. There are other kids that they'll be calm with, and it's the people. So this is why I say find the right tribe, right? So when your kids are little, it's easier. You can kind of find the right kids, the right parents that have similar values, similar schedules that will help them be on the same path. For you as an adult, seek out people that you think have the same values as you, kind of are, whether it's, health or a spiritual aspect or whatever, it's whatever you're really wanting to put at the forefront. When you have that tribe, it makes it a lot easier. And I go back to my friends in Hawaii, my yoga friends, it made it really easy for me to eat healthy and to have a stable emotional state around them, because that was what they did every day. So for me to eat healthy was easy, because if I was with my friends and I was having a good time, I was with friends that were eating healthy. So it's easy to eat healthy. So this is something that gets tougher with teenagers. They often find friends that might make them feel good in the moment, but they don't align with a lot of other values. So if you can nip this in the bud early or make kids aware of it, it can really, really be helpful. So something that's said often is that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I really agree with that, right? So if you want to be more successful, if you want your kids to be better at something, try and find the kids that do that well already. Or at least try and find kids that are seeking to do that well. And that can really help you. So we have spent a lot of time on this today. I realize we're at time. What I want to spend a little time next week on is how you take these habits and you stack them. So I promise to talk about that a little bit more next week. And we'll spend some time talking about that. A lot of what that'll mean is finding the right trigger to what helps you stack habits. And all stacking habits means is, if I really like watching this one show, maybe what I do is I get on a treadmill, and when I'm on the treadmill, that's when I get to watch the show. Or when I'm watching the show, that's when I fold laundry. So I pair things that maybe I don't want to do or it's harder to do with something that I'm already doing. Or maybe like when I'm brushing the teeth in the morning, I also think about this, right? If you can stack your habits with something you're already doing, it can make it easier to create that new habit. So to review really quickly, you want to break down habits into really simple things. They're so simple, it's hard to say no to. You want to pair or stack the habits into things so that it's easier for you and your kids to put them with something they're already doing by nature. So if it's already habit to take their shoes off, start to pair taking their shoes off with washing their hands as soon as they get home, or whatever the case may be. And we're going to talk more about creating a pace and celebrating small gains next week. Happy New Year. I hope this was helpful. And I will see you again next week. I really encourage everyone, please, 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 I encourage you to fill out the survey on Facebook. Let us know what you want to know more about. The more subject matter that I know that you want to know about, the more I'll cover it, right? Right now, I'm covering what I see in my office, what I hear from friends and family and myself, and I think is important. But if I hear from you, then we're definitely going to cover what our community needs, and that's what we're here for. So please fill out the survey, let us know what you need, and I will see you all again next week. Have a great week. Happy 2024, and be well.